Hello, everybody. You're tuned into the Couch GMs podcast for week 4. I am your host, George Kerth, along with the two best friends that anyone could ask for. The I Suck at Fantasy Football, Tyler Snyder.
Yeah. What's up, guys?
And Cody Roadcap.
How's it going? So, if this is your first time, welcome. Just a little background on us. We're three best friends who love talking football. We met in college. We play fantasy football. We talk every day about football, and we wanted to bring that conversation to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, some things you can expect from our podcast is we're going to do some weekly breakdowns and predictions of every game, give you some fantasy advice for your lineups in the upcoming week, give you some bold prediction, and just have some fun talking about football.
If you would like to get involved in the discussion, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Couch GMs. And why don't we go back quick and take a look at last week's show and how we did with our weekly picks and bold predictions.
I don't think we
So
need to do that.
last
That's all right.
week, if you didn't hear in the intro, Tyler was our loser last week, and we decided to have a little bit of fun. And if you follow us on social media, saw him in his pink I Suck at Fantasy Football shirt. He went 10-6 on the week, and Cody and I went 11-5. Do you guys expect to see Tyler losing that week?
Well, I didn't expect to lose, so I knew it had to be one of you two.
Yeah, but let's just be honest here. The Eagles didn't deserve that win. And if the Bengals would have pulled off the win, you guys made fun of me for my pick. But if they wouldn't have tied, then me and Cody would have been tied for the bottom. Actually, all three of us would have been tied.
Then we would have just had to see both of you in the shirts. So I mean, I'm kind of upset that didn't happen now.
And I do feel bad though. 10-6 for a week of picking NFL is actually pretty good. So to still come out and loser with a 10-6 week, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'll bounce back. Don't you worry. And the punishments are only going to get worse, so you guys better be ready.
I definitely don't plan on ever having to deal with one, but
you're going to have to.
But luckily, we didn't have punishments for bold predictions because I don't think any of us got our bold predictions right.
Yeah, that didn't go
No,
well.
I mean, I picked 3 Atlanta Falcons to finish top 5 in fantasy, and while the Falcons did again blow another lead, they also blew my bold prediction. I don't think any of them even got in the top 5, so that was not too good.
Yeah, week 3 wasn't good for me either, as we had an ACL torn on Thursday night to kick things off, and then a couple more throughout the week. So people's knees were not safe, as I predicted.
We needed to speak it into existence a little bit more. Now we know for the future.
And my bold prediction was that the Ravens-Chiefs game was going to combine for under 45 points, and even though the Ravens didn't put up the points that people were expecting, and I was right on that end, the Chiefs almost put up 45 by themselves. So that didn't go well. But don't worry, that's why they're called bold predictions. And we got another chance of it this week, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, so let's get right into week 4 and their headlines. And we hinted at some of the bigger headlines with that Falcons blowing another lead, but the headline out of that game was the quarterback change. And what do you guys think of the 2-0 Bears ditching their quarterback at halftime for Nick Foles? Was it the right move?
We need a stats guy.
I mean, I know Foles is a folklore hero in Philadelphia, and I'm an Eagles fan, so I guess that people would expect me to be defending Nick Foles. But after seeing how he's not succeeded anywhere outside of Philly and lost jobs to people like Mitch Trubisky, I don't think it's going to be any different. I've heard some people talk about how they've never seen a quarterback who was undefeated to that point get benched, and I think Trubisky did get a little bit of a bad side to that whole argument. I don't know if he deserved to get benched that quickly, but Foles did bring him back, and I think that a whole throw to the L thing that they did in the end zone with him and Anthony Miller on that last touchdown is just going to be foreshadowing to some more L's are going to be taking in the next few weeks.
Oh, plenty of L's. Nick Foles, yeah, he had some off-the-bench magic, but that's what he does. That's what he's known for. He actually has a quarterback rating in the 80s when he is listed as the starting quarterback for his entire career. He's not meant to be a starting quarterback. He's just that off-the-bench magic guy that the team can get behind. And honestly, it's not like he's taking over as a starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a big team around them. He's taking over for the Chicago Bears, who are just, I don't know how they're 3-0 because they're a weak team. He's going to have a lot of work cut out for him if he wants to pull off some magic this season.
You're right, and I think I heard you say we need a stat guy. Well, I have some stats for you. So Foles replaced Trubisky right after halftime. So in that game alone, Trubisky was 13 to 22, which is 59% completion percentage, which isn't great, 128 yards. And then Foles, when he come in, although he did throw two more touchdowns to make the comeback, he had a completion percentage of 55%, so lower than Trubisky. The Falcons dropped a few interceptions that Foles threw. Plus, Trubisky also had that 45-yard run, which is something that Nick Foles' game has nothing on. So I think this is a huge mistake for the Bears, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Trubisky back at starter sooner than later.
Continuing on the Bears topic, there was a big injury uh, to Tariq Cohen. He tore his ACL and he is out for the season. What do you guys think this does to the fantasy stock of David Montgomery?
Well, I was never a big fan of David Montgomery, um, since he became a Chicago Bear. I liked him coming out of the draft, but I didn't like the Bears as a landing spot. I do think his numbers will probably increase just because there's more pieces to the pie, but I don't think David Montgomery is going to all of a sudden start winning you your fantasy leagues. Just like I don't think anyone was really starting Tariq Cohen except on a bye week flex or anything like that.
There's also rumors today of the Bears bringing in other running backs to fill that void, including Lamar Miller, a veteran. So that could actually take some carries away from David Montgomery, too.
I definitely like the idea of trying to trade for a couple of shares of David Montgomery while it's cheap, unless you hear something like a Lamar Miller gets signed, because I think a lot of it's just actually getting carries, and he should get an uptick with even in the passing game a little bit without having Tariq Cohen there.
And Tariq Cohen's injury was, I mean, it's a fluke, but he did call it happened when he called fair catch and still got ran into. But some people might say that's dirty, but that might not even be the dirtiest play of the week. We had Tristan Hill,
Oof.
alligator roll Chris Carson at the bottom of the pile, and he's going to be out now with a knee sprain for 1 to 2 weeks. Are you guys picking up Carlos Hyde? Do you think it was a dirty play? What are your thoughts on that situation?
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I don't know how a player can do something like that. And yes, I do believe it was a dirty move. He's holding his ankle and he's rolling on the ground trying to twist it. Like he's obviously trying to hurt Chris Carson. And I don't know how somebody gets away with that. I heard that he might be fined, but oh no, $100,000 fine to someone who makes millions of dollars a year. Who cares? He should be suspended at least 4 weeks, in my opinion, on unpaid weeks, on top of getting fined. You shouldn't be out there trying to hurt people.
I totally agree. I literally screamed at my TV the moment I saw that happen. I There's no place for that in the NFL. I agree. The fact that he isn't going to be suspended supposedly is outrageous. Um, as it comes to the backfield, I mean, I guess you have to take Carlos Hyde for the 1 to 2 weeks. That offense is just clicking, and there's going to be points out there to be had. But I really hope Carson comes back strong, and because the Seahawks did not deserve that to happen.
I don't know, George. I'm kind of disagreeing with you on that. I'm not taking Carlos Hyde in my opinion. Um, I just believe that with Chris Carson out, they're going to try to spread the ball around more, and I think it's going to turn into more of a running back by committee and rely even heavier on Russell Wilson just airing the ball out. I really don't think any running back in that system is worth starting, at least for the first week.
So you think actually it's going to be more of the Tyler Lockett decaf Metcalf show?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the pass catchers and Russell Wilson are both going to have a boost in fantasy stock, which is crazy to say because they've been putting up ridiculous numbers in the first few weeks. But I think they actually get even better this week. Start your Seahawks.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on start your Seahawks, but that might be some matchup related things. So I mean, we'll hit that a little bit later. But I'm one that is on the Carlos Hyde train. I just don't trust Pete Carroll. We've seen him let Russ cook a little bit, but he still wants to run the ball. And Carlos Hyde has shown, whether it was Cleveland, Houston, Jacksonville, he normally gets the short end of the stick, but he has produced as a running back. So I think he is definitely a solid play this
Yeah,
week, especially with
well,
their matchup.
he has produced, but if you look at when Chris Carson got injured, it wasn't just the Carlos Hyde show. Travis Homer actually stepped in and got a lot of the carries after the injury. It wasn't just Carlos Hyde.
No, you definitely have to worry about Travis Homer taking some reps away from Carlos Hyde, but I think Carlos Hyde resembles more of that power running back that Pete Carroll likes. So I think that his stats and numbers will reflect that this week.
I agree with that as well. And you can't really worry about he's not getting all the carries because especially one for a backup running back, you're not going to find one that gets all the carries. And two, there's so many running back by committees out there already that you're not. It's doesn't. You don't necessarily have to have a running back that gets every single carry to have somebody who's at least going to have you a good week in fantasy.
All right, guys, we've heard the breaking news the last 2 days. Let's move right on to the possibly biggest news going on right now. We have our first NFL COVID outbreak, and I'm sad to say it's from my Titans. Um, this situation has just gotten out of control. It started with 3 players and 5 coaches, and now it's 4 players and 5 coaches. The game originally they said it was supposed to play on Sunday, no big deal. Now they're postponing it to Monday or even Tuesday. What do you guys think of this situation?
I think it's going to be a tough test for the NFL to see how they handle this. I think if we're going to look for a glimmer of hope or good news, so far, no Vikings players have tested positive, which shows a sign of the social distancing and wearing masks even on the sideline are helping. Um, I think it'll be interesting to see how many more players over the next couple of days end up testing positive. I hope that the number's low and we can actually get this game in this week and make it a small detour in hopefully a long, successful NFL season.
I agree. I mean, I'm still a little bit worried about the fact that no Vikings have tested positive yet. I'm worried if something happens there, then you're going to see even more issues with the scheduling of that game. I mean, I personally would not be too upset about a little bit of a Tuesday night football action if we get Steelers Titans pushed back to there. But I mean, I think the fact that there was only one additional Titan that tested positive today or Wednesday, that is very promising, and them still getting that game in this week. I'm still a little worried about the Titans with practice time since they're actually banned from their facility until Saturday. But I think it's good that the NFL is trying to get that game in.
It's going to be tough playing a 3-0 team without any practice, of course. Pushing it back to Monday or Tuesday does give them a day or two of practice, thankfully, although that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to practice in their facility. They might have to go somewhere else for it. As far as the players that got COVID, I feel like the NFL will be making a bigger deal about this if it was, Derrick Henry would have had it, but more likely if it was on a different team. If Aaron Rodgers, if Tom Brady, if Drew Brees, if one of those guys got COVID, the NFL
A
would be
big
making a
market team
bigger
got it.
deal. But the Tennessee Titans are a small market team, and the players out are Bo Brinkley, our long snapper. We have a backup linebacker in Kamale Correa. Nobody too dire, nobody too big at the moment. We do have one of our starting defensive linemen in Daquan Jones. He is out. But luckily, we knew that this was a possibility coming into the season. There's a reason they gave the extended practice squad so that if something like this happened, you have the players to call up and fill in the roles. So I think the Titans are going to be able to fill those gaps just fine. I mean, yes, they don't have much practice, but you have teams that go from Sunday games to Thursday games that don't have much practice all week anyway, and they play just fine. So I think they'll be able to weather that storm as well. All eyes right now are just on the NFL. And I got to say that after something like this, the first 3 weeks we didn't have any real COVID issues. And now this outbreak happens. The coaches and the staff that are on the sidelines that keep pulling down their mask and don't seem to want to follow the rules. I know that there have been big fines, but I think the penalties are going to skyrocket now after something like this because the NFL does not want to see the season shut down. We know all eyes are on you now, especially with this outbreak. Coaches need to beware.
Yeah, I agree. I think I even saw a report. I think it was yesterday. It might have been today, but there is potential at forfeiting draft picks for not following these guidelines, like wearing a mask or even protocols for entering the facilities and stuff like that. So I agree. I think these punishments are going to become harsher. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have some outbreaks that a part of the punishment becomes, well, you don't get to practice, but you still have to play. It might not be fair because it is still a virus that we can't fully control, but it's almost like it's going to punish the teams that don't take it as seriously.
It's true. And I mean, I think a good example, a good thing to compare this to would be how the MLB handled it. And they had their really bad outbreak at the beginning of their season with the Miami Marlins. And it seemed like most of their outbreaks after that were pretty contained. They still had a couple because, like Cody said, it is not, you can't fully control what happens. And there's things that are out of the protocol's control, even. But I think this is actually the wake up call that some teams need to make sure they stay compliant and show that they need to put an effort in to make the season happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, guys, each week we do our predictions. Usually we would start with the Thursday night game, but I think this week it's fitting, since we don't know exactly when the game is going to be played, to start with this Steelers-Titans game. With everything we just said about the Titans having less practice than usual and having some players out and the unknowns circling this game, who do you have in the Pittsburgh at Tennessee Titans potential Tuesday night football game?
I'm hoping for the Tuesday night football game. More days with football is better in my opinion. Um, Two 3-0 matchups or 3-0 teams facing up in this matchup. I would go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think their defense is better. I think we didn't lose Taylor Lewan to COVID, but we lost him to injury, and I think that's going to be rough as Ryan Tannehill looked pressured quite often against the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that pressure continues, and the Pittsburgh Steelers stay undefeated.
I personally went back and forth on this game about 5 times. I feel like it was. I think originally I went with Pittsburgh because I was worried about the Titans in practice time, and it is really a big deal. I think when it comes to installing a game plan for going against a team as good as the Steelers are, but after hearing that this game got pushed to Monday or Tuesday, and the Titans will at least have a couple of days with coaches to try to install a game plan, so it's not going to be too much different than say a Thursday night football game. Plus, I just think the Titans are the better team, a team that they're primarily running the ball anyway. I think that installing a game plan in a day or two is not going to be as hard. I'm going with Tennessee.
Yeah, this one was difficult for me as well. I was leaning Pittsburgh. My gut was telling me Pittsburgh. I think the whole country is looking at Pittsburgh except for maybe George. But those are the games that the Titans usually pull out. The teams that we're not supposed to beat, the games that we're not supposed to win, are usually the ones that they pull out and look awesome. I mean, Derrick Henry looked slow in the first couple of weeks, but he really got it going in the second half of the Week 3 game against Minnesota. If he can continue to roll, we're going to be hard to stop. We look like we had some pass catcher issues with guys not being able to get open, but we might get A.J. Brown back, our number one receiver. We had some corner issues, not being able to shut down some of the receivers. We might be getting our number one corner, Adoree Jackson, back. We had some issues on the left side of the line with Taylor Lewan getting hurt, and Ty Sambrailo didn't seem to pick up the slack that Lewan left. But our right tackle, Dennis Kelly, might be able to slide on over to left tackle, as our first round pick, Isaiah Wilson, is supposed to be back at practice. He might play and start at right tackle. I think this game honestly depends on what the injury report looks like going into the game, and it's going to be tougher to follow since we don't have those practice reports like that we normally do. But all that being said, I like Tennessee here. Pittsburgh hasn't played anybody worth mentioning, and they also haven't won by a whole lot in those games. I think Tennessee keeps it close and pull it out at the end. We might even get to see our fourth consecutive game-winning field goal from the man who missed 4 field goals in Week 1, Stephen Gostkowski.
If anyone held him in fantasy after that Week 1 game, it paid off for you guys last week because he put up, I think it was 24, 25 points.
25.
It was a pretty good week. I know a lot of people don't even play with kickers anymore because they're so up and down. But for those people that do play with kicker leagues or kickers in their leagues, I should say, he definitely might have even won you your week.
Make kickers great again.
Well, I think we talked enough Pittsburgh and Tennessee, and there's still a lot to unfold in the next coming days. Yeah, unfold in these next coming days with that matchup. So let's move on to the matchups where we are sure about. And we're going to kick it right off with a Thursday night matchup between the two worst teams in the NFL.
Come on,
Vegas
NFL.
even has them as the weekend. The NFL. Wow, that definitely threw me off track there, but it's all good. Even Vegas has it as a pick'em. They don't know who's going to win. We got the Denver Broncos at the New York Jets. And surprisingly, we're all taking the Broncos in this one. George, I'll let you start. Why are you taking the Broncos?
Adam Gase shouldn't have a head coaching job. I don't really care if the Broncos are down to a third string quarterback. I think I like their team overall better, coaching wise, ability wise. I don't like either team. I'd prefer not to pick either team at this point. But I think Denver's got more going for them, even without their starting quarterback.
NFL, what are you doing? You got Bengals and Browns. You got Dolphins and Jaguars, and then you follow that up with this zinger of Broncos and Jets. I think whoever's making the scheduling is just busy on Thursday nights, so wants to make sure the game he misses isn't important. Well, not all of us are
Smart.
busy on Thursday nights. We want something to watch. Come on, NFL. Give us something better than this. But I have to agree with George. The Jets are an absolute joke. I predict them to go 0-16 this year and have the number one overall pick, although it's going to be a tough battle with the Giants. So yeah, I got to go Broncos here. I don't care who's left on that team; they can still beat the Jets.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm going Broncos too. It pretty much came down to, even though the Broncos are injured, I could still name off the top of my head more Broncos players than I can Jets players. I will say I will give the Jets a slimmer chance to win this game only because traditionally the home team on Thursday night has come out victorious. But we saw last week it's not always the case, and I don't think it'll be the case this week.
Well, let's move on to a game that's a lot better than Broncos and Jets. Not that that's saying much, but the New Orleans Saints are visiting the Detroit Lions. Normally, this would just be an easy blowout win for the Saints. However, they didn't look too great last week. Is anybody giving the Lions a chance to win this one?
Nope, definitely not. I mean, we have a bunch of no's across the board, which means New Orleans, but I think it just means no, the Detroit Lions don't have a chance. Um, but I did see there's a chance that Michael Thomas, if he can convince coaches that he is not a re-injury risk, could actually play this week. He is practicing, at least limited. But even without him, I mean, I know the Saints, you could say, didn't look too great last week, but they also played against Rodgers and the Packers, who I think are one of the class teams of the NFC. I think they're finally getting it together with Emmanuel Sanders, which is big. I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, this game was actually tough for me, tougher than I thought it would be. I just go back to, Drew Brees doesn't look like himself. I know a lot of people are saying his numbers looked pretty good last week, but how many times during that game did he throw it behind the line of scrimmage to Alvin Kamara, and Kamara broke 15? Sorry, phone went off, guys. And just so you know, I rocked the Go Pack Go ringtone. But as I was saying, how many times last week during that game did the New Orleans Saints just dump it right off to Kamara and he broke 15 tackles and carried it 70 yards down the field? I feel like it happened more than once. So I'm not trusting Drew Brees. And I think Galladay's return brought out a better Matt Stafford. So I think the game will be close. I know Saints are 4-point favorites. I wouldn't be surprised if it was less. I'll still give the edge to the Saints just because I think Sean Payton's a better coach, but I wouldn't be surprised if we wake up Monday and the Lions have pulled the upset.
Nope, give me the Saints. Not even worth discussing. Saints win.
Okay. So maybe we'll find a game that we all disagree on at some point, but it's not going to happen for our next matchup, which is the Los Angeles Chargers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucks are 7-point favorites. What do you guys think? I mean, not much to say here, I don't think, but I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, Herbert showed promise when he stepped in as the backup, but then again, teams weren't able to game plan for him yet. They didn't expect him to start. So last week they had a chance to game plan for him, and he looked shaky. I think that Herbert's going to figure it out. I think he's going to have some big games. I think he's actually going to be a really good quarterback in the future. I just think he has his rookie struggles that he has to deal with first. Until he gets those settled down, I got to stick with the Buccaneers here.
I agree. I'm also going to go with the Buccaneers. I also think Herbert looks good and is going to have his moments. The only thing that scares me with the Buccaneers is missing Godwin again. I think that actually really did help them get to another level next week or last week. but I still think they're going to be fine against the Chargers. The Chargers are missing some pieces.
Godwin, if you can get healthy, that would make a lot of fantasy owners really happy.
You would be one of them.
Yeah.
I would not be, because I didn't take any shares of Chris Godwin this year because I didn't trust Brady. And luckily, it's not because of Brady, but it's because he can't stay healthy. But I was just going to say, I'll say it every week. I'm not a huge fan of West Coast teams coming to the East Coast for 1 o'clock games, especially bad ones. So that's why I'll stick with the Buccaneers.
Okay.
So our next matchup, I'm surprised, isn't on Thursday night because it's one of those classic two mediocre teams. But we got Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cincinnati Bengals. Jacksonville is +3, and they're coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Miami Dolphins last Thursday night. But I'm going to go with the Jaguars in this one. I like Joe Burrow. He just seems like the game is still going a little too fast for him. So I think with the extra time, Jaguars will pull off a win here.
I mean, I disagree that time. I think Burrow has the tools to be able to get past Jacksonville. I know Jacksonville has been impressing some people compared to their expectations, but their expectations were very low, so it's not saying much. Burrow should have won that game last week. Sadly, saying it as an Eagles fan, Tyler was right there. And the Eagles are a much better team than Jacksonville, at least in my opinion. So I don't see why Cincinnati can't finally get Burrow his first win this week.
Yeah, I think that this game is actually kind of a coin flip for me. I could go either way. I really think Minshew's gonna, be angry about his loss last week and step it up and have a good game. But the reason I went Cincinnati in this matchup, and the only reason I went Cincinnati, is because the Jaguars have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. And the only reason the Bengals haven't been able to get to that next level and give Burrow any help is because the run game hasn't done anything to this point. The offensive line can't block for the run game long enough for it to do anything. But now they're playing the Jaguars. They don't even need to block. The run game should be wide open. Joe Mixon should have a much better game. And once you get that run game going, less pressures on Joe Burrow. I think he'll be able to feast. So I'm giving the game to Cincinnati this week.
As a Joe Mixon owner, this time I am ecstatic to hear, the possibility of a huge game for him. And I also think you have to keep a close eye on DJ Chark. I know he returned on a limited basis this week, but that chest injury, if it holds him out again, that could it showed last week that Jacksonville definitely needs him as a receiver on the field. So if he's out, I might even consider switching to Cincinnati.
It's amazing how much it looked like one receiver made such a difference for Gardner Minshew. I don't think that was all the Dolphins. The Dolphins weren't good enough to make him look that bad.
I agree with your point there. So let's move on to our next matchup. We can call this one the battle of the most disappointing teams. We have
Absolutely.
the 0-3 Minnesota Vikings at the 0-3 Houston Texans, two teams that came into the league with playoff expectations. Minnesota are 4-point underdogs, and I'm going to go with Houston. I don't love it, but I'm a Packers fan, and I can't root for the Vikings, so I'm going to go with Houston and just think Deshaun Watson finally uses his magic to pull out a victory.
So this week I'm allowed to say that the Texans are actually facing a beatable opponent and not get roasted on the podcast?
No, you'll still get roasted. No matter what
Okay.
you say, you're going to get roasted. That's just how the podcast goes.
Houston is facing a beatable opponent, and I think they actually held their own last week against Pittsburgh. So
I was surprised by how upright Watson stayed, so I'll give you that.
they're the 0-3 team that has a chance to go and be something in the playoffs, I still think. But no, they got Minnesota handled. Minnesota still looks like a mess. I think they are very much regretting giving all of that money to Kirk Cousins. Give me Houston.
Yeah, originally I had Houston picked for this one. I'm actually switching my pick to Minnesota. After watching that game last week, I don't think Minnesota's as bad as their record is showing. They definitely struggled in the first 2 weeks. Kirk Cousins looked horrible in week 2, but they started to click last week. The reason that Kirk Cousins looked so bad is because he didn't have the Thielen and Diggs matchup anymore. He lost Diggs. He was forcing it to Thielen. He didn't throw to anybody else. Now Justin Jefferson really broke out in a big way, 175 yards and a touchdown on 7 catches. He broke out in a big way, giving Kirk Cousins another person to throw to, and Dalvin Cook is just an animal. The guy is an absolute beast, and I don't see Houston putting a stop to him. I think Justin Jefferson's going to eat again. I think it's going to be a close game. The game could definitely go either way, but I'm actually going to say go Minnesota here.
I agree with you. I think Minnesota could have a great offensive game, but it's not their offense that makes me pick Houston. It is totally their defense, and Houston has a lot of weapons, and Deshaun Watson, who is far better than Kirk Cousins.
And speaking of that defense, it will be kind of interesting to see Yannick Ngakoue rematch with Deshaun Watson after all his years in Jacksonville, now on the Vikings. And to your Kirk Cousins point, I do think he looked pretty good last week compared to the first 2 weeks. But that last 2 minutes after Gostkowski kicked the field goal, he couldn't complete anything, and their drive essentially went 3-and-out, and he couldn't help them move the ball at all. So I think Kirk Cousins showed in the moments when his team needs him most, he still can't meet the expectation.
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, you can't really put all of that blame on Kirk Cousins because for the first time in the game, the Titans actually had pressure on him in those last 2 minutes. He said hike and he had 3 people in his face, and he kind of just had to throw it away quickly. He didn't really have the time to make his reads, make a good decision, and complete the pass. Now, I understand if you have somebody like Russell Wilson that can scramble out of the pocket and still complete it, it's a different story. But not everybody has that Russell Wilson. Uh, I don't put the blame fully on Kirk Cousins for that. I think his offensive line really let him down in the last 2 minutes.
Well, why don't we start talking about Russell Wilson then? And we can move on to Seattle traveling to the Miami Dolphins. Now, I know this is one of those West Coast teams going east, but Cody, you still think it's Seattle?
Yeah, like you said, I am definitely not a fan of that, but I'm going to take Seattle in this one. Fitz had his good game last week, and he traditionally doesn't do back-to-back good games. Um, and from a fantasy perspective, because of the matchup, I wasn't in on picking up Myles Gaskin. I don't think he'll be as successful this week. Give me Seattle. I don't really think it'll be close, but it is one of those games that there's just something in the back of my head that's like, this could be an upset that catches the league by surprise. There's always seems to be one each week, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was this one.
I think it'd be a little bit hard pressed to say this will be the upset. I definitely think it's Seattle pretty easy. I know you just brought up Myles Gaskin there. I would not play him against the Seattle defense, but if there's any shares of him out there in your fantasy leagues, take him. I think season long he's going to help you a lot with your RB2 during buys or flex.
Yeah, guys, I don't think it's any kind of a contest. I'm taking Seattle in my survivor pool this week. I don't think there's any chance the Dolphins upset Seattle. So let's go on to a better matchup. We have the Cleveland Browns traveling to face the Dallas Cowboys. Cleveland is 4.5 point underdogs. You guys both went Dallas. George, what do you think about this matchup?
I think Dallas's offense has been absolutely amazing. I mean, maybe not for some of you fantasy owners unless you're owning Dak Prescott because the ball's getting spread around so much. But they've been giving up a ton of points. I don't think Cleveland quite has the boom offense as some of the teams that they've faced, the Cowboys have faced lately. I think they can hold them off enough to actually get a victory. But I think it's going to be close in the fourth quarter and they're going to make the Cowboys fans sweat.
Yeah, well, I'm picking Dallas as well. I think Dak Prescott is going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I'm not sure if you guys heard, but Jerry Jones went on his radio show and essentially ripped Dak Prescott for his interception in the last game, and said to him throwing an interception instead of a touchdown is why he's not Patrick Mahomes or Tony Romo or a great quarterback. So there is definitely some drama in there, but I think
Tony Romo,
Dallas
great
will.
quarterback.
That's what I heard too. Maybe laugh
Hey,
too.
hey, that's Jerry's boy. He'll stand for him. But I agree, Dak is just as good as Tony Romo. Hot take. But I also think Cleveland is over 500 for the first time since 2011. That's pretty crazy to think, and I don't think it lasts. I think Dallas has a bounce back game. But to George's point, if it is close, I think the running attack of Cleveland could play keep away if it comes down to that. But you also have to watch out for Kareem Hunt's possible injury. I know the coach said it's day to day, but he is definitely a valuable asset to that team. So something to monitor throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick against you guys in this one. I know Dallas is favored. I know Dallas is the easy pick here. I'm going with Cleveland. I think Dak Prescott is overrated. I think the Cowboys as a whole are overrated. They only got their win because the Falcons do what the Falcons do and blew their entire lead. I'm not super high on the Browns this year, but at the same time, they have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, who are both dominating. They both look like they could be the number one running back in the NFL, in fantasy, in stats, whatever. And yet they have both of them. And they are eating. And the fact that you have to focus on Kareem and Nick Chubb, it is opening up the passing game. Odell Beckham is finally starting to get involved. I still don't know where Jarvis Landry is. He needs to get it together. But I just feel like the Browns have so many weapons. They're going to find a way to pull this one out and upset the Cowboys.
But say the Cowboys get up early in this game, you have to abandon the run at least to an extent. Don't that doesn't that concern you a little bit?
No, I don't think they really have to abandon the run. I mean, it depends how big the lead is, obviously. Depends on the game situation, but you have Kareem Hunt. I mean, look what the Saints did last week with Alvin Kamara. You just dump it off to Alvin Kamara, let him do the work. That's all Baker has to do. All he has to do is just dump it off to Kareem Hunt, and he's going to go. I mean, you don't have to run the football with these running backs. These running backs are so good in the passing game as well that they're still going to find ways to get it done.
And I think it's fun just to point out that Dallas has entered the fourth quarter of every game this season trailing. So to think that this week is going to be the week that they break out uh, could put some reservations. But I did pick Dallas, so I obviously think it might be that week. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to Aldon Smith. You know, he was out of the league for 5 years, and I know it's only 3 weeks and it's still early, but he currently leads the league in sacks. It's a pretty impressive story for a guy that had potential and then lost it all and making a rebound and a comeback.
Absolutely. Amazing story.
So let's get right into our next game. You know, maybe the upset of the week last week with the Lions over the Cardinals. We have the Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. This looks like another game that we're all taking the same team, which is Arizona. I think it's a bounce back game for Kyler Murray. I don't think we'll see multiple interceptions for him. I think he can run pretty much all over this defense. Give me Arizona quite easily.
I agree. I don't think that we're going to see Kyler Murray have two bad games in a row. I also think the Carolina game was a fluke. I I still don't like Carolina without Christian McCaffrey. I don't think Mike Davis puts up all those yards every week.
Yeah, going with Arizona. It's not even close for me. But one interesting thing on this game, Cody, I'm going to ask you this. You are our resident trade master, uh, self-titled. So, Kenyon Drake owners out there, you see Chase Edmonds taking a lot of the carries. You see a lot of the points coming through the air, going to D-Hop, going to Kyler Murray running the ball. Kenyon Drake was a early second round pick in most leagues and really isn't performing up to par. If you are a Kenyon Drake owner, help me out because I have him here, please. Do you trade him? And if so, who are you targeting?
Yeah, I know where this question's coming from. I believe I saw a trade from you in our personal lead with Kenyon Drake in it. But yes, I would actually try to get stock in Kenyon Drake. I think he is valuable. I think that offense scores points. I don't think you're going to get a lot for him, though. So it depends. You know, we could be talking about another middle round running back. You know, maybe you have Joe Mixon. You're tired of waiting for him to break out. You throw a Joe Mixon for Kenyon Drake, two underperforming second round picks, and you just want to you have faith in the other guy, or you know maybe you package it for a smaller running back and a smaller receiver, and just go off the name. But if you're going to go off the name, you might have to do it earlier, or just hold on to him because I do think his second half of the year he will be that guy that we saw at the end of last year.
I agree, but I think that resurgence for him might actually come sooner. I know I heard some people talking about they think that Arizona lost last week because they saw 2 good weeks out of Kyler Murray and all of a sudden thought, oh, he's got it now, and tried to put too much on his shoulders. I wouldn't be shocked to see them going back to more running style, letting him run the ball and running some option plays more in that direction, which is going to be big beneficial for that running game.
And Carolina is also one of the worst run defensive teams, so he could have that big breakout this week. So maybe you hold him this week and trade him for a bigger name as like, look, he's coming out, and then you can try to get someone like a Josh Jacobs or an Ezekiel Elliott or someone like that with a more name value that might be better the rest of the season.
You hear that, guys in my league? Kenyon Drake is on the trade block. Make me some offers. Let's get some
I'll
moves.
send you one right after the show.
Good. I'm expecting it now.
Alrighty, so we can move on to our next matchup. We talked about this team in the beginning with the Chicago Bears. They are hosting the Indianapolis Colts. Surprise, surprise, the three of us are all taking the same team again with the Indianapolis Colts. Is this more you just like the Colts or you don't like Foles? Tyler, we can start with you on that one.
Yeah, I'm not big on Nick Foles. I'm really not, but I'm also not big on the Colts. I think that Philip Rivers is past his prime. I think he's overrated. I think the Colts as a whole are overrated. Yeah, their defense looked good, but they haven't played anybody worth mentioning. Yeah, they had 2 pick sixes against Sam Darnold, Adam Gase, and the Jets. So is it even worth talking about? I mean, I think the Colts are going to show their true colors later in the season, but I don't think it's this week. I think the Bears are going to struggle having Nick Foles as their starting quarterback. You can game plan for Nick Foles. He didn't look good last week despite his 2 touchdowns. I think the Colts are going to win this one.
One of my favorite things to do in life is to just make Tyler angry by saying Nick Foles to Riley Cooper, great play.
Look, back when Nick Foles was on the Eagles the first time, I used to say he was overrated. Everyone was saying, oh, but he has 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. He's the greatest. No, he's not. He did little dump passes to LaShawn McCoy and threw deep bombs to Deshaun Jackson, who everyone says you can't overthrow. It's really hard to be bad when you have those guys on your team. And then he used to throw touchdowns to Riley Cooper, who also wasn't good. I don't understand why he had a starting job in the NFL in the first place. There's a reason he's not in the league anymore. Nick Foles will forever be the biggest headache in my life because he's overrated. He's not that good, yet he gets it done enough that I can't stop hearing about him.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Nick Foles overrated, um, and I'm just not a big fan of the Bears. I know they're 3-0, but it might be a fake 3-0. But so give me the Colts in this one. I'm not a huge fan of Philip Rivers, but I think he has enough left in the tank to get him over the Bears this week.
Also, don't like the Colts long term. I like them this week. Give me the Colts.
So last week there was a lot of hype going into the Monday Night Football game. It was going to be the greatest game of the year. Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens, two best teams in football, finally facing off against each other. The Chiefs looked good. They held up their end of the bargain, but the Ravens came out flat. This week they have a easy matchup in the Washington football team. We all have Baltimore, but if you guys are a Baltimore Ravens fan, are you worried about your team after seeing them come out flat against a good Chiefs team?
I wouldn't say worried. I mean, the Chiefs are could be the best team in the NFL yet again this year. Sure, Baltimore has some things to worry about with. It seems like there is a way to game plan out to stop their offense. They have to work on that. Some of it's going to be the growth of Lamar Jackson. Some of it's got to be coaching. But they're still one of the best teams in the AFC. I think it's going to be interesting to see when they finally face off with Pittsburgh. And if they match up well, they shouldn't have any problem winning the division. They're going to be fine.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that their defense, although it didn't look like it on Monday night, their defense is still very good. Um, I think Kansas City is tough for anyone, and I think this one matchup doesn't change my opinion of the Baltimore Ravens. I still think they're right up there with the Chiefs as the second best team in the AFC, and I think They have it pretty easy this week over Washington. Surprisingly, they have their 13-point favorites. That seems like a lot in today's NFL, but they could hit it. That's how good I think the Ravens are.
Yeah, I would probably stay away from the 13 points just because it's so high. But no, they won't have a problem actually winning the game.
So I disagree with you guys. I mean, not about the game itself. I do think that Baltimore's going to beat Washington easily. But if I'm a Baltimore Raven fan, I am scared. I'm not saying that the Ravens aren't a real team, that they're going to struggle all year. But last year, the Ravens were the number one seed. They got so full of themselves, so cocky, big trust, whoop whoop, and they came out and they sucked in the playoffs. The Titans weren't even one of the better teams in the playoffs, but they came out, they faced a good team in the Titans, and they blew it. Then this year, they start 2-0 against two teams that aren't worth talking about, and they get all cocky again, and then they face a good team in the Chiefs, and they struggled. There was a stat that was put out during the Monday night game that said, since drafting Lamar Jackson, the Ravens are 0-10 in games that they were trailing at the half. Now, if you have a quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes, a Russell Wilson, an Aaron Rodgers, any of those guys, you're trailing at the half, you're not worried, you know your guy can get it done. But if you're a Ravens fan and your quarterback has struggled when having to play from behind, when having to be in a situation where he needs to throw the ball to win the game, needs to throw the ball to get things done, he struggled. He really has not looked like a good quarterback. Yeah, he can still make some throws when the whole team is expecting a run, but when everyone's expecting a pass and know he needs to pass, he can't get it done. And if I'm a Ravens fan, I want this team to shut up, stop being cocky, focus on playing, and figure out a way to win these ball games. That Chiefs game, if something like that happens again in the playoffs and they go into the playoffs as a top seed and lose first round again, there's going to be panic in Baltimore.
I think you brought a good point about them being cocky. I know it was said multiple times on the broadcast how they were, they thought they were the best team and this was their first real measuring stick. But luckily it's week 3. I think it will humble them. I still think they're a very good team. And the stat you pointed out, while yes, it's alarming, but that's since Lamar Jackson's got drafted, not since he became the starter. So quite a few of those include when Joe Flacco was still the quarterback. So that stat can be a little misleading, but there is some truth to you can't count on him. They almost need to be having a lead.
Well, then you look at the schedule and their upcoming games. They have Washington, which should be an easy win. They have the Bengals, which should be an easy win. The Eagles, with all their injuries, should be an easy win. They could get right back into that cocky mindset, thinking that they're the best team in football, and then have to face the Steelers, Colts, Patriots, Titans, good teams after that. If they get back into their old mindset of, we're the best team in football, no one can touch us anyway, and they get all relaxed, they could see an 0-3 stretch right there.
Yeah, I guess I just have faith. Well, I guess I just have faith in John Harbaugh um, to reeling in some of that cockiness and using this game as a good example of why they need to stay level-headed and realize they are vulnerable. So I think Baltimore's future is still pretty bright.
Yeah, I get why you're talking about worrying with the not learning from last year, basically, but it's still a whole new team. I think you have to give them a chance to learn from that loss last week before you go to they're just going to get cocky again after they win the next few weeks because they should have easy wins the next few weeks. You're right.
Well,
Yeah, well, speaking of easy wins, we can go into our next matchup with the New York Giants going to the Los Angeles Rams. Vegas has them as 12.5-point underdogs. We're all picking the Rams. It should be an easy win for them. What are you guys' thoughts on this game?
I mean, you talk about there's always one game a week that has the chance to go the way you don't expect. For whatever reason, I have that feeling here. I don't know why. I think I still like the fact that the Giants got Devontae Freeman and they really haven't had a chance to throw him out there yet. I think that's going to take a lot of pressure off of Daniel Jones when it finally does happen and he starts to get let loose a little bit. Um, Still got the Rams. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like this could be closer than people think.
No, I think that's ridiculous. Give me the Rams. Give me the over on the 12.5 points. The Rams almost had one of the most miraculous comebacks last week that we've ever seen. I think they're going to come out angry at the fact that they didn't finish that game off and didn't start hotter. I think they're going to air it out, start Robert Woods, start Cooper Kupp, start. Oh, don't start any of those running
Tyler
backs.
Higbee?
They're terrible. But even start Tyler Higbee. I don't care. Uh, give me the Rams.
Yeah, I'm taking the Rams too. It surprised me. I saw this week that Goff is actually having a really good season. He's the third quarterback on PFF's rankings. Um, you mentioned the comeback last week, but they happened to be on the opposite end of a questionable pass interference call, almost like karma came back around to get them. And you're right, the Giants just looked bad. I had some hope that without Saquon, Daniel Jones would start to be more free or not rely on that safety net of Saquon, and he just didn't do that. I hope he can continue to grow, but I don't think it starts this week, so I'm taking the Rams as well.
In a better matchup, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 3-0 and looking hot, playing against the New England Patriots, who are a bit of a surprise this season with Cam Newton, how well they're playing. Do you guys think that there's any way that Cam Newton pulls off this upset against the defending Super Bowl champs?
I definitely think this is the matchup of the week. New England is an underdog by 7 points, and I mean, I guess I could see where that's coming from, but I think this is going to be closer than that. The Chiefs, there's a chance, like you were talking about with the Ravens having to eat that loss, there's a chance that the Chiefs are riding high because you go against that cocky team like the Ravens, and then you come out and maybe they're going to be feeling a little bit of a high too. And then you got people like Cam coming in there on the Patriots who think they still have something to prove. And Belichick's always going to keep them together. I think the Patriots have impressed me, even with the change from Brady to Cam. Cam has looked almost as good as he did, or if not better, in his MVP season. Um, Give me the Chiefs, but give it to me really close.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs as well, but this is another one of those games that I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way. Bill Belichick just is a coach you don't count out, and I think Cam is playing pretty well. Um, and I do think you should watch out for Damian Harris's return off the IR. I know the Patriots running backs are something you don't ever really want a piece of in fantasy because they're so up and down. Like we saw Rex Burkhead this week explode. He might only have 2 touches next week. That's just how it goes. But I think Damian Harris has potential to be a go-to running back. Maybe not this week, but a name to keep an eye on in the upcoming weeks. All training camp, we heard about how he was doing everything, running, catching, and I think Damian Harris could be a surprise in the upcoming weeks. But back to this matchup, yeah, I just think Kansas City, they're rolling after that scare against the Chargers. They played super well last week, and I think they'll beat the Patriots this week.
I agree. I think it's going to be a Kansas City victory, and I think they're going to win it kind of handedly. I don't think it's going to be as close as you guys are making it out to be. I do think New England is a surprise this year. I think Bill Belichick is a genius. Cam Newton looks impressive, but I think they're going to be severely outmatched in this. New England gets by on having such a good defense. There isn't a such thing as a good defense against the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs by 14.
Yeah, I think to the only point, uh, you know, is if the Patriots can line up and play that power run option football and almost make their offense the defense and keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field. If they could somehow dominate time of possession and keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes, I think that would be their only chance at victory.
We are talking about Belichick on the other side, and he is one of the best people at taking away a certain person or whatever it might be. I mean, that person's Mahomes on the Chiefs, and he can give it to anybody. But I would not be surprised to see running the ball with everybody and their brothers and the cashier from Dippin' Dots, just to keep Mahomes off the field.
Yeah, he's the best at taking someone away, and you said you think he's going to take away Mahomes. I don't think you can take away Mahomes. And the Chiefs are so deep. If you take away Mahomes, you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You take away him, you got Tyreek Hill. You take away him, you got Sammy Watkins. Take away him, you got Demarcus Robinson. Like, take away him, you got Travis Kelce. I can keep going. There's no way that he can take away your best thing, because their best thing is their depth and the level of talent they have on that roster.
But he can limit it as much as he can using the clock. And that's going to be what he has to try to do here. I imagine that's what he's going to go for. And then at that point, you're making it a rush to 28 points, let's say, instead of giving the chance for the Chiefs to break 40.
Chiefs are breaking 40. I'll put a bet on that one.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that.
All right.
Oh, we got to bet, guys. I don't know what are you betting?
Yeah, tell me, what are your terms here?
All right, here's my terms. Ready? If the Chiefs don't break 40, I will get egged on video, posted on our Instagram. Egg on the head. But if they do break 40, you got to get egged.
That's it. I'm in. Let's do it.
All right. Consider it bet.
All right, everyone, make sure you follow us on social media to see Tyler get egged in the head right after he had to wear a "I Suck at Fantasy Football" t-shirt.
Yeah, you're getting egged this week, bud.
Hey, this is the game of the week, but I think we made it a whole lot more interesting. But moving on to the team that lost to the Patriots last week, the Las Vegas Raiders are hosting George's sleeper Super Bowl team, the Buffalo Bills. And surprise, surprise, we're all taking the same team again with the Buffalo Bills. Not much to say. They're playing lights out. Josh Allen is taking the league by storm. I think Buffalo wins this one pretty easily.
I agree.
I also agree. I mean, Bills for the Super Bowl. That's
it.
So no one has no chance for no one gives any glimmer of hope for the Raiders. Nothing. Pretty much Buffalo.
The Raiders pulled off the
Vegas
upset
only has
against
it
the
by 3.
Saints because they were able to utilize Darren Waller to an extent that the Saints couldn't stop it. And then they come out last week against another tough opponent, and they didn't even throw to him. He didn't get anything. And Josh Jacobs was limited with an injury, nothing that held him out, but something that definitely slowed him down, and you can see it when you're watching him. And you slow down Josh Jacobs and take away Darren Waller, and they have nothing left. And I think that Buffalo's just going to watch that tape from last week. They're going to shut down Waller. They're going to find a way to stop Josh Jacobs. That defense is so good. They're going to find ways to do it. And like you said, Josh Allen's taking the league by storm this year. I don't think there's any way Buffalo loses this game.
I agree there's no way Buffalo loses, but I don't expect Waller to have a repeat of last week. Just remember they faced the Patriots. We just talked about the Patriots taking the team's best player out of the game, and Jacobs was hurt, so it was obviously Darren Waller. Doesn't shock me he didn't have a great game looking back, but don't hit the panic button on him yet. He'll be okay.
Yeah, and speaking of injuries, I saw John Brown got added to the injury report, so I think Diggs stock goes up. And if you're in deep leagues, you might even want to play Cole Beasley because the Buffalo Bills will probably put up points against these Las Vegas Raiders. Making my trade look bad, Snyder. Making my trade look bad.
Cam Newton's going to turn it around. He just had one bad week. I don't think our trade's that bad. See, the big thing to remember, guys, anybody out there that's listening, trades aren't always great because of, who you're getting back overall wise. Let me put it this way. So Stephon Diggs for Cam Newton was our trade that we discussed last week. And if you look at that from the outside, you're thinking, wow, Stephon Diggs is so much better. That's an obvious trade. But Cody had 7 wide receivers on his roster. He was deep at wide receiver, but he had no quarterbacks. So getting a great quarterback in Cam Newton and losing a guy that could have rode your bench all season long anyway because of the depth that you had, it really benefited you big time. So don't always make your trades just based off of the name value. Do what works best for your team.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Don't let big names make you reach for somebody. Do what's best for your team. It makes no sense to trade for a 5th running back just because of the name of the guy if you have no receivers. So definitely a great tip there. But we can move on to the Sunday night matchup. which might be the injury bowl. Can we quote it as that?
We
I
I
mean, there's
definitely
a lot
call it
of
the
injuries
injury bowl.
around the league. But we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers are 7-point favorites. Early reports don't look like Jimmy G will play, so it'll be another week of Nick Mullins.
It looks like Kittle might come back this week, though.
Yes, that's a good point. I think Kittle will make a big statement, and I think Kyle Shanahan is just too good of a play caller, play designer. Anybody that can play running back in the NFL looks great in his system, and I don't think Philadelphia is stopping anyone. Even though I picked them last week as my 0-2 team, I don't think this is the week they bounce back. But luckily, they're still in a pretty bad division.
mean, I went back and forth, maybe because I'm an Eagles fan, trying to figure out a way that I can pick them to win this game, and I just couldn't find it. They're still decimated with injuries. Alshon Jeffrey might come back this week. I heard there's a chance of that. Maybe they'll actually finally start giving Greg Ward all the playing time and catches he deserves. I said he'd get at least 5 last week. I think he finished with 7 or 8. But you're missing Dallas Goedert now, so that whole running the 2 tight end set is out the window. Teams can try to bracket out Zach Ertz a little bit more. Um, I just don't like it, even with all the injuries to San Francisco. I think it's got to be San Francisco.
I picked the Eagles to lose to the Bengals last week, and I caught some flack for it. Eagles fans were not happy that I would pick them to lose to the Bengals, and they ended up tying. I'm going to flip the script completely. I'm actually going to pick the Eagles to beat San Francisco this week. My biggest upset pick of the week. And honestly, I think the only reason I picked them is last night I started watching the All or Nothing Philadelphia Eagles story on Amazon Prime, and it got me all hyped looking back at the Eagles being great
They were
again.
better
And I
simpler
heard
times.
I heard Carson Wentz to Alshon Jeffrey touchdown after touchdown, and I was like, oh, hey, he's coming back this week. This might be it. They might have their resurgence. And I just feel like Carson Wentz is going to play better under the lights. I don't think that he's going to let himself fall to 0-3-1. I think he's going to play lights out. I don't think they're going to keep playing well, but I think he's going to play lights out this week. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles. Also, one other point. Yesterday, the presidential debate was the big thing that everybody was watching. I don't get into politics. I don't care. But at one point, Trump did say that all bad things happen in Philadelphia. And I feel like Philly fans and the Eagles are going to be hyped from a statement like that. It's going to get them angry. It's going to get them playing angry. Give me the Eagles this week.
The amount of Twitter fallout I saw from that comment, anything from it's always sunny memes to gritty memes to Eagles, anyone from Philadelphia was just going off, embracing that quote even from Trump last night. It was amazing.
And luckily, this game isn't in Philadelphia, so maybe the Eagles will have good things in San Francisco. But Tyler, you talked about Wentz, and George, as our resident Eagles fan, there's a lot of buzz about should they bench Wentz for Hurts. Like, what is your temperature as an Eagles fan on where Carson Wentz is in his career right now?
It's hard to defend Wentz after looking at everything that's gone down, but there's no doubt that he's got a lot of problems around him. It's not all his fault. No one can stay healthy. I mean, I understand that he's still got weapons out there, and you can argue, oh, other people make it work, but you still look at he's missing Dallas Goedert now. He's missing Alshon Jeffrey still. Deshaun Jackson has been in and out all year. Half of his offensive line is gone, and the other half is not the same offensive line that he had when he was doing his potential MVP year. The Eagles won the Super Bowl. I think he just needs more time to settle in with his new weapons, because you also got to remember some of these guys that are out there catching balls for him are rookies still too. Um, I think he'll be okay. I don't think it's right to throw Hurts in there because you're just going to ruin Carson Wentz's ego even more, even though he's still dealing with the whole Nick Foles thing. I think he'll be okay. It's just going to be a tough, maybe even full year, because they still have a rough schedule coming up after this with 2 more potential losses to the Steelers and Ravens after this week.
You know, I don't think it's Jalen Hurts' time. I don't think it's time to bench Carson Wentz, play the backup. I don't think it's gonna be that time in 2020. I think even if Carson Wentz continues to play poorly, you still stick with him at least through the year. Show him the confidence. He just signed the extension, so you have to stick with him. But I honestly don't believe that Carson Wentz is going to be elite or great again until he leaves Philadelphia. And I hate saying it because he's been such a big thing for Philadelphia since he's been there. But how can you expect a guy who was talked about in the MVP conversation, got injured, and watched his backup win a Super Bowl? And ever since then, Philly went from loving him to hating him. About 50% of Eagles fans said we should have Nick Foles, Wentz should be the backup. He watched his entire city lose confidence in him, his entire city flip on him. He has to come into work every single day and see a statue of the guy who replaced him because he wasn't able to be on the field before he even steps foot on the practice field. He has to see that statue. There's so much pressure on him. I don't think he's going to be able to bounce back and be great again until he can get away from that pressure and kind of start fresh with a new team.
I think you have a good point. I was going to bring up Philly fan expectations. I don't know if you guys remember. I can't remember the game, but there was a broadcast during his rookie season, and the broadcaster said Carson Wentz is Peyton Manning pre-snap, Aaron Rodgers post-snap,
That pissed us off
and
so bad.
and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this guy's a rookie. He's played like in 4 games, and and you're right. And now that he got hurt during an incredible season, and they still won the Super Bowl, the team has completely lost all expectations. I'm still a Carson Wentz fan. I still think he has potential to be a very good quarterback in this league, but I think you might be right, Tyler. He might need out of Philly before that comes back to fruition. And one last point on that game: what is your guys' thoughts on not or on this game? But last week there was 19 seconds left. It was a 64-yard field goal. What are your thoughts on them punting instead of either trying to kick it for the win or at least picking up the first down?
If I
Horrible
remember
decision.
correctly, Cincinnati had no timeouts. By the time the field goal would have been completed, there probably would have been, 13, 14 seconds on the clock. You would have been asking a rookie quarterback to either throw an out route for 10 yards or somehow miraculously be able to get a spike after a 10-yard play, which I don't think we would have had time to do, um, for the Bengals to have a chance to win. So you basically took your win probability from, let's say, 5% by kicking the field goal down to nothing just to make sure that the Bengals didn't win. I mean, what's the difference between you going 0-2-1 and 0-3? Go for the win.
Normally, not much, but in your division, that horrible NFC East where nobody can seem to win a game anyway, half a win might actually be pretty valuable, not going to lie. But at the same time, I think it was a horrible decision. A 64-yard field goal, you have a kicker that made a 61 in the past. He's got a leg. Give him the chance. I mean, go for it. By punting it away, it looks like you're just throwing in the towel, laying down, and dying. And as a player, I would never want to see my coach make that kind of a decision. I don't want to see my coach give up faith in us and think we can't do it. Even if all odds are against us, I want to see my coach believe in us and want to go for it. And if I was an Eagles player, I'd be really disappointed and it'd kill my morale.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like at least throw a Hail Mary. If you don't want to kick the field goal, run the lateral play to run out the 19 seconds. Try something. Don't just give it away. And that the same goes for Zach Taylor. Once he got the punt, just to run a draw play and then let the clock run out. I thought that was terrible clock management. It showed no heart for both those uh, coaches last week. But that's probably enough on Philadelphia at San Francisco. So we can move into maybe a doubleheader, might not be, but the Monday night game, the Atlanta Falcons at the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are 3-0. They're looking great. Aaron Rodgers is looking better than ever. And we're all picking the Packers in this one. I'm just going to say the defense scares me, but the offense looks so good right now. Matt LaFleur is a genius. Snyder, don't want to hear it. And the
LaFleur's
Packers are going to
terrible.
win this one pretty easily.
I'll give LaFleur credit. He does look good so far. To give everybody background on why he said that, Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator for the Titans. When he was, I believe he was ranked 27th, the 27th best offense in the league. And Matt LaFleur was the one running that offense. And we had some good pieces at the time. And the Packers are like, wow, 27th ranked offense? That guy needs to be my head coach. What a head scratching move, but to, like I said, I'll give him credit. To this point, it looks good. And in this game, I'm going to go with the Packers again. The Packers are one of my sneaky favorites to win the Super Bowl coming into the year. I couldn't believe that people were ranking the Vikings ahead of them coming into the season. The Green Bay Packers have the number one ranked offense in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. The Atlanta Falcons have the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. It's going to be a blowout win for Green Bay. Start every Packer you got in fantasy. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
I don't know if I'd say it's a blowout just because the Falcons can put up points. They just obviously don't have the defense. Packers are going to put up a ton of points. I remember hearing a segment from a Rodgers press conference this week where he talked about feeling so much more comfortable and confident in the offense this year compared to last year, and it shows greatly. They are clicking. I don't want to pick them to lose until they play someone like the Chiefs. I don't know if they actually play the Chiefs, but until they prove me wrong, I'm picking them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Packers, you can call me a homer, but their offense looks great. I saw a stat today that their points per play average is currently the highest in the NFL history. Uh, Matt LaFleur, through his first 19 games, has more wins than any coach in NFL history. Rodgers seems to be, some people say pissed off, some people will say in a good headspace in the offense, playing back to 2011, 2014 esque Rodgers. Um, and I just think the Falcons are overall defeated. They have two back to back heartbreakers. I don't think this team, I think Dan Quinn has lost the team. So unless, they surprisingly fire Dan Quinn tomorrow and Dirk Cutter becomes the interim head coach, I don't think the Falcons really even show up for this game.
So, Cody, let me ask you a question. After watching the Packers the last 2 weeks, one player that I am really impressed with is Robert Tonyan, the tight end. He's a guy that I've never heard of before, and I really thought that their rookie from last year, Jay Sternberger, was going to be their main tight end, but Tanyan's looked good. So, we had a fan reach out to us last week before the game about tight ends. If you are desperate for a starting tight end, and your four options are Greg Olson, Drew Sample, Dalton Schultz, and Robert Tanyan, which one of those four guys do you feel most confident in moving forward?
Moving forward or for this week?
Moving forward.
So even though I'm a huge Packer fan, moving forward, I'd probably feel more confident in Dalton Schultz. For this week, I would probably feel more confident in Robert Tonyan. I think last year, Robert Tonyan started to look good. He got hurt in Dallas early in the season, making a great catch, and then hurt his hip when he fell to the ground and wasn't able to play the rest of the season. But you brought up Jay Sternberger, who had a few drops, but he is starting to come around. He is still a LaFleur favorite. He's still a Rodgers favorite. And he was on the COVID list to start this season. So that stunted his growth even more. So I think as the season progresses, Jay Sternberger will start to eat into those Tanyan snaps. But if it's a short term, I would go Tanyan. If it's long term, out of those four, I'd go Dalton Schultz.
I wouldn't want to give up on Drew Sample yet either, though, because I mean the Eagles have a way of just throwing a wrench into everything that you expect out of them, and I think them stopping the tight end was just a fluke. But I still think you're going to see a lot more out of Drew Sample as a security blanket in Cincinnati. But I don't really know if I would like Tanyan until I see him perform more with Devontae Adams on the field. You got to remember that Devontae Adams was inactive last week.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. If you are desperate for a tight end, some streaming options are Robert Tanyan and Sample. We highlighted Sample last week as a big potential breakout, and he was a bust for last week, but Look at him again coming up. He could bounce back. Joe Burrow does like that check down Charlie tight end. So, guys, that is all of our picks. As always, we are going to post our picks on social media. If you disagree with any of our picks, or if you have picks that you want to tell us about that you took, tell us. Chip in, make sure you stay involved, talk some trash. We love it. We'll talk some trash back. So, guys, we're going to move right on now out of the picks. And I have a little debate for you. Last week, we discussed the 0-2 teams that we thought had the best potential of bouncing back and still making the playoffs. Let's flip the script this week and go with 3-0 teams that we think are the biggest pretender. We have the Titans, Steelers, Bears, Packers, Seahawks, Bills, and Chiefs as our 3-0 teams. And since I'm already talking, I'm going to keep rolling on and take the easy pick, which is Duh, Bears. I think they're the biggest pretender of this season. You have Nick Foles. He's a bust. You just lost Tariq Cohen. The defense isn't playing up to the level that we remember from recent years past. I don't think the Bears are going to be able to keep this up. I think they're the biggest pretenders of the 3-0 teams. But, guys, let's get to some more difficult ones since I took your easy pick. And who do you guys have?
Well, I'm going to go with your team. It might break your heart.
Don't you
In
do
the
it.
Tennessee Titans.
Don't you do it.
I got to. Uh, their their long snapper has COVID, and they've relied on field goals to win all their games.
That's true.
So that's one.
They
Their
they
opponents they've
they
played.
missed 4 in week 1 and still won.
You have a point. So they win dirty. Two, they haven't really played anybody. I think their combined records are 1-8, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's correct.
So they haven't really played anyone, and now they seem to be a team that can't even practice, at least this week. So I just think the Titans, until they play somebody that makes me go, wow, this is actually a team that can make a run in the playoffs, I'm going to say the Titans are our biggest pretender.
I mean, I'll even take over for you on this one, Tyler, and I'll say I disagree because, yeah, sure, maybe they haven't played anybody. They also haven't been playing full strength either. Tyler talked about a lot of the injuries for the Titans back when we were talking about their matchup with the Steelers. And you're looking at they're missing their number one receiver and there's their biggest deep threat in AJ Brown. You're missing a number 2 cornerback. It's going to help the defense greatly. They've been able to go 3-0 with a field goal kicker missing 4 kicks in week 1 and without a bunch of their top players. I don't think they're really a pretender.
I just have to say, I agree, but, sometimes things happen. Winning games by field goals or one score, sometimes you can get on a roll of those, and some seasons you're really great at those, but a lot of times you start to regress back to the mean. So I think all these close games will start to catch up with them, and the Titans won't be able to finish, or they'll start losing by field goals, which is why I have to take them as the biggest pretender.
Got to remember that Derrick Henry is also a second half monster. He usually starts slow in the beginning of seasons and then feasts in the second half and turns it on. And he's already the league's leading rusher, mainly because he gets so many carries. But he is the league's leading rusher right now. And if he's going to improve in the second half, man, I like my Titans. I like them this year. But George, let's move right on. Who's your biggest pretender this season?
I'm going to go with the team that the Titans are playing against this week, and that would be the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I like it.
I mean, if you're talking about records of opponents, the Steelers have a record of opponents so far that is 0-9.
Hard to believe that anybody has faced 0-9 so far.
I mean, I don't know, but I there's so many things about the Steelers that I'm questioning. They haven't played anybody, and they've still played some close games. Roethlisberger is still he's back, sure, I get it, but he's old. I gotta think that there's got to be regression coming sometime soon. I wanted to defend Juju for the longest time. I don't know if he can keep this up as this number one receiver for a full season. I really don't know. James Conner's going to get hurt again. If Benny Snell is real or not, we don't know. I
I can't get on board. I think that defense is too good. I mean, we kind of saw even last year when they didn't have Roethlisberger, they were able to keep in close games because of that defense. I think you have a point. James Conner's injury history can always pop up, but I think Benny Snell and I think even Anthony McFarland, he started to look good last week. It was nice to see, a 26 for the Pittsburgh Steelers running for 10 yards again. It felt right. So give me the Pittsburgh Steelers to make a deep run in the playoffs. They are definitely a competitor, not a pretender.
All right, guys, like I said, I love when people get involved. So if you are a Steelers fan, please reach out and talk some trash to George. Tell him why he's wrong. My fellow Titans fans, please reach out to Cody. Tell him why he's wrong. And if you're a Bears fan, come at me. I will defend it. Now, speaking of the Bears, let's move on to our bold predictions segment, which we struggled with last week, but we're going to try again this week. And Cody, I hear that your bold prediction actually relates to the Bears. What is it?
Yeah, so I think we've all said it numerous times. There was a quarterback change, and it was the wrong choice. Some people say you're a Packers fan, you just want to play Trubisky. But I think this was a year Trubisky started to look, I don't want to say great, but he started to look average or just what the Bears needed to keep them in games and win games with their defense. I think Bears fans will be begging for Trubisky after this week. Foles will not get it done, and the Bears quarterback situation will get even worse as Bear fans dumped on Foles faster than they loved him, and Trubisky will be what they're calling for, and that's just sad for Bears fans.
Okay, our first bold prediction that has to do with the fans. I like it. I'll move on to my bold prediction. So far this season, through the first 3 weeks, the highest scoring game or highest scoring team was the Green Bay Packers, who put up 43 points in a game. And the second highest scoring team was also the Green Bay Packers, who put up 42 points in a game. Kudos to you, Packers fans. But those are the highest
Now the
scoring
four is the
games.
GOAT.
So my bold prediction for this week is that not one, but two teams are going to break 50 points this week. One of them might even be the Packers.
I was going to say one of them is probably going to be the Packers because that's how good we are on offense.
And you're hoping the other one's the Chiefs.
Uh, I know they're going to at least break 45, but 40. No, the bet was 40. I know they're at least going to break 40.
All right, my poll prediction, I did kind of talk a little bit in that Giants game that I have an inkling that they're going to do well, and I mentioned Devontae Freeman. I think this week Devontae Freeman goes for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the Giants will only lose by 7.
Yeah, that's bold. That's bold because
Yep.
the Rams are one of the better defenses so far this year. They're actually pretty surprising. They did give up some points to the Bills, but the Bills have one of the most electric offenses this season too. Also very surprising. I don't see any way that Devontae Freeman comes from a bust last week and then just completely flips the script and is a top player this week. I don't see it.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't see this one, George. Devontae Freeman wasn't even on a team 2 weeks ago. So to come from not even playing to over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns against a very good team, I think that's quite a stretch. But like we always say, that's why it's called bold predictions. So I think that's all we have for today. I just want to thank everyone again for listening. You can follow us on all your social platforms at the Couch GMs. Leave comments, leave reviews, give feedback, talk trash. Whatever you want, we're here for you guys, and just want to say thanks again for listening.
And don't forget, you guys can ask us any fantasy questions that you have, even last minute. I don't care if it is 12:30 on Sunday and you can't decide who to start. Reach out to us. Let us know. We will help you out as fast as we possibly can. If you let us know earlier in the week, we might even answer your questions on the air. And guys, just please get involved. I know I keep saying it, but just reach out, talk some trash, post your comments. Who do you like this week? Who do you not like this week? Let us know. Let's have some fun together. This isn't just about us, it's about all of us.
You've been listening to the Couch GMs, and we will catch you all next Thursday. Have a good week. Happy week 4, everyone.